Hey everyone, and welcome to the Meeting Protocol Monthly podcast, where we chat with some of the very coolest people in the event planning business and bring you useful and relevant information about what's happening in the world of meeting planning. I'm Dora Figueredo, the head of events and education at Meeting Protocol, coming to you from New Jersey. There are so many different types of events and meetings, and the professionals behind them aren't always called event planners. I've known lots of folks who work in university and college admissions offices who consider themselves event planners, but because they don't have traditional titles, they're not always considered event professionals as such. And if you've been following Meeting Protocol for the last few months, especially our podcasts, you will know that I spoke with Diana Hackenholtz from the Association of Collegiate Conference and Events Directors International about the CCEP designation. So I know that universities are very important centers for event planning that don't always get the love that they deserve. So I am super excited to introduce you all today to Bethany Lestochi. Did I say that right?
Lestochi, but it's okay.
Lestochi. Sorry about that. Lestochi.
Happens all the time.
Very Italian. Got
Yes.
it. Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at the University of Miami. She has a passion for innovative and creative event planning and has been wowing students with university events for the last 6 years. And she is here today to tell us more about her experience, events that are specific to universities that we can all learn from, and what she sees as a future of university experiences. So thank you so much, Bethany, for joining us.
Thank
Tell
you
us
for
where you
having
are joining
me.
in from today and the background of what got you into event planning.
Yeah, of course. So I am joining today from beautiful Miami, Florida. As you mentioned, I work for the University of Miami, specifically in our undergraduate admissions. But honestly, I started in event planning in high school when I was kind of reflecting. I was like the leader of prom committee and I was on student government and, you know, that kind of carried over into college where I got really involved in student organizations, specifically my sorority. I helped plan our university's orientation. And, I was studying public relations and kind of took this little, side track into higher education just because I loved my student experience so much, specifically my experience with my sorority. And so, post grad, I started working for my sorority's headquarters, ended up going to grad school for higher education, and all of my jobs, event planning was a part of. I was never like a event planner. They were always event adjacent. And so my last institution and my last role, and then my previous role, I am very much an event planner within the context of higher ed. So yeah, kind of a roundabout way to get where I am, but absolutely loving what I'm doing so far and excited to chat.
I love your background so much. I love that you have been doing event adjacent things since high school. And I think that highlights something that a lot of event planners can relate to, which is a lot of us didn't exactly start in events. It's like we did something that made us realize, oh, like we're really good at this, or we
Yeah,
could be really good at this. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that.
of course.
Okay, so my first question for you is, not a dig at you or your profession, but as I mentioned in the intro, some people will hear undergraduate admissions and not immediately think of events. So could you start off by telling us about the types of events that are common for a university admissions office?
Yeah, of course. So I still do all of the kind of quote normal things an admission officer does. So I still talk to high school students. I still visit high schools. I still read college applications. Just within my office, I sit on our events team. And so besides all of our admission work, we are also responsible for our department's events. And so they kind of fall into three different buckets traditionally. So we have our recruitment events, our admitted student events, and then we kind of have other things that we dabble in. So really for our students, what we're doing is every fall, we're putting on several different recruitment events. So we're talking to prospective students and their families about, why the University of Miami might be a good fit for their college search and ultimately their collegiate experience. We're giving them basic information about this is what the university offers, as well as talking to them about our application process. So then once we transition to the spring, we have a group of students who we've admitted, and now we're trying to have a conversation of them of, congratulations, you're admitted. You might have been admitted to some other institutions, but here's why you should choose the University of Miami. Here's what we can offer you, not only for your college education, but for your student experience and why we would be a good fit. So in essence, they are marketing events where we're giving them the information. We're trying to convince them to, apply or to attend, why it would be a good fit for them. And so just giving them, what UM is all about. So those are kind of the two biggest buckets. And then, like I said, we have some other smaller events, whether it be receptions. We host a fly-in program where we actually invite high school college counselors to come to our university. That way they can go back to talk to their high school students about, this is when I went to go tour campus and these are the majors they offer. So we get to interact with kind of other people beyond just prospective students and families in that way. But yeah, they're a really important part of kind of the college search process because those students get to come to campus, although we are doing virtual events too. But traditionally, those students get to come to campus for a day, get to have the feel of a college campus, because I very adamantly feel that a lot of college campuses just have a distinct feel when you step foot on campus. And they get to have that experience and envision themselves of, could I go to school here for the next 4 or 5 years, depending on their program. So yeah, it's really exciting. It's really fun because they're loud events in the way that we really get to show them our school spirit. We really get to be creative, and we're not just saying, here are our majors, but we really get to show them not only the academic side of things, but also the student experience, which is so cool.
Yeah. How big are these events usually? Do they range widely in size? And are they invite only, or is it kind of open to any prospective student?
Yeah, so typically our prospective student events are open to anyone. We do have capacity set on them simply because of space on campus, which is an issue I know many event planners, no matter what field they're in, face. And so typically those programs we're looking at 800 to 1,000 people on campus, depending how many guests students are bringing and things of that nature. And then once we get to our admitted student events, those are going to be invite only, obviously have to have been admitted to the university. And then we also have some specific programs based on whether or not they were scholarship recipients, specific programs that are a little bit more targeted and personalized.
Okay, very cool. And it sounds like you wear a lot of hats. So it's not just event logistics and planning, it's also the marketing piece. And I
We
find
have
that
a fantastic marketing team, thankfully. So
well, great. So it sounds like you do not operate as a one-person show. What kind of support do you have from your department? How is work usually divided?
yeah, so I mean, I will preface this by saying every institution is different, right? My last role, I was kind of a one-woman show with a graduate assistant that, got to help me out a lot. Thankfully here, however, I oversee our campus events team, which is 5 full-time staff members. And so, like I said, we still all have our own kind of admissions work that we do. And then we are also the events team. And so, we divide it up a little bit differently. It might be this person's in charge of this specific recruitment event, whereas this person's in charge of this specific admitted student event. Some of our larger programs, like our scholarship weekend or one of our fly-in programs, we tag team because, we might be booking travel for other people, not just doing our on-campus logistics. And so honestly, as the person who oversees the events team, I really try to work with my staff to say, what do you want experience in? What do you feel like your strengths are? And then we kind of divvy up responsibilities then. So it's not the same every single year. It certainly can be, but wanting to make sure that my staff is growing as event planners, if that's something that they're interested in, and getting diverse experiences in their kind of resume, so to speak. So we're very lucky to be very supported. And then on top of that, we are planning everything, but our whole staff, as well as our student ambassadors or our tour guides, are responsible for actually working our events as well. So we have a lot of support, which when you're looking at events this large is definitely very, very helpful.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like you manage a really well-oiled machine. Like it's a pretty big team, 5 people. That's quite a few. Yeah. And all of your events are on campus, right? Do you have anything that you do off campus ever?
So pre-pandemic, we did have regional receptions for admitted students in the spring. And so we're still kind of trying to figure out what the future of that looks like currently. And then, as I mentioned, we have a fly-in program where we fly in high school college counselors to come visit our campus. And part of that experience is we're also showing them the city of Miami. So we're taking them to dinner off campus. So still local, but not explicitly on campus. And then, as I mentioned before, we still are doing virtual programs, knowing that not everyone feels comfortable traveling to campus quite yet. Not everyone has the means to travel to campus. So still offering those experiences as well.
Awesome. What kind of data and measurements do you use to better understand the student population and their campus needs? And what are your most important KPIs?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I think we are very on top of generational data. Obviously, we're not doing that research ourselves, but we're very on top of generational data because we want to know, this current generation that's in high school, what are they looking for in their next steps? What are they, how do they even view college? And so, for example, we know that Gen Z, they're very concerned about the cost of college. They're very concerned about student loans and debt. And they also want practical hands-on experience that's going to translate into a career. And so in our planning process, when we're thinking about breakout sessions, when we're thinking about speakers, we're thinking to ourselves, okay, well, we definitely need to have someone from financial aid there, and he can also talk about kind of the resources we have for our students in terms of them managing their own money. We definitely need to have people there from research or from our career center to talk about the hands-on experiences that they would get if they came here. So that kind of general data is really helpful in the planning process. And then on the back end, obviously we survey our attendees for just guest experience. Did they think it was worth it traveling to campus to come get this information, to come to get this experience? And then we're also diving deep into things like our show rate in terms of, how many people registered and actually made the effort to come to campus. And then my favorite part actually happens months later. So when we look at the world of admissions, we always talk about this funnel. So there's these students who are just out there, and then maybe they have a touch point with Miami. Maybe they come to a few events, maybe they applied, maybe once they're admitted, they're actually, this kind of funnel that gets them here. And so months after an event, once our application deadline has passed, that's when we're also looking at, okay, how many of the people who attended this event actually ended up submitting an application? If they were admitted, how many have now actually enrolled and deposited at UM? Because at the end of the day, that's what our events are trying to drive for. They're trying to drive students to the University of Miami. And so that's my favorite part, even if it happens months after the event, to kind of see, how we fit into our department's kind of overall mission and goal.
Yeah. Do a majority of your events happen at a specific time of year? Like, is there just like one high recruiting season where it's like campus tour after campus tour after campus tour, and then you get to spend the rest of the year planning? Or is it like sort of a
Oh my goodness,
level?
it's a little wild. So obviously, our highest recruiting season is fall. Our application typically opens August 1st, and then we have two application deadlines, November 1st and January 1st. And January 1st and January 15th tend to be the most popular deadlines, just kind of across college admissions. And so those whole months is when we're like, here's why you should apply to the University of Miami. Here's what we could offer you. And then based on when we release decisions, which can be anywhere from kind of December to April, depending on when they applied, that is kind of our, okay, now we have to do our yield events or our admitted student events of, now let's actually convince them why they should come here based on whatever other options they have. So it's hard because, in the summer, we're leading up to the fall and planning. Once those events are over, we're getting ready for spring. And so we're not hosting events in the summer typically. We're not hosting events usually in the winter months because that's when we are knee deep in reading all the applications we receive. But it definitely is very cyclical in nature.
Awesome. What is an event that you've worked on that you are particularly proud of?
Yes. So I thought long and hard about this question. So when my previous role was not in college admissions, but it was in fraternity and sorority life. And so one of the programs that I did every year was a large multi-track conference for different officers or student leaders. And I don't like keynotes. That might be a little bit of a controversial statement in the event planning world. I do not love keynotes. I think they can be really great motivators, but I find it hard. I don't know, it's kind of hard to see that return on investment down the road. Other than walking out feeling pumped and walking out feeling motivated, how are particularly students, how are they taking that and actually impacting their student experience with whatever they've heard? And so I struggled with, and keynote speakers are not, inexpensive, which they are experts in their field. And so I fully support, their ability to do that. But I was struggling with, how can I spend my university's money like this when I can't really articulate the return? And so what we decided to adopt instead was we called it an interactive keynote. But every year it was on a theme that we felt that our student community needed. And so the first year we did it, we brought in a vendor that did a Monopoly style board game with them. But every student played a different character. And you started off with a different amount of money based on what character you were. So if you were playing a Black woman, you started off with less amount of money than the white man. And you experienced the game differently based on where you landed and, how much money you owed to who. And it was just an incredibly insightful, interactive experience. Could I have done a keynote on, race and race issues in America? Yes. But how much more impactful was that interactive experience? And then the second year, we were focusing on mental health. We created, I'm probably going to date myself here, Post Secret. We created a Post Secret exhibit on our college campus from secrets that were submitted by our students. Okay. And then got to facilitate a conversation around mental health and owning your story. And so to me, so much more impactful than someone standing on a stage for 60 minutes and delivering a story. And to this day, just an event that I'm so excited that to have been able to see the growth of it, because it was just so cool. And it was so fun as an event planner to be like, okay, what are we doing this year?
Oh my gosh, this is so amazing. You saying this is, I'm like going through my mind of events that I'm planning, and I'm like, okay, I think I got to get the phone number for that person who did the Monopoly.
Oh yeah, I can definitely send it.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so amazing, so impactful. And side note, I actually still read Post Secret every Sunday when he puts his new secrets up.
I felt like I was dating myself because I've told that story before and people are like, oh, I don't know what that is. And I was like, oh, okay.
For years, I lived in Virginia, in Alexandria, right outside of DC. And when the post office museum actually had a Post Secret exhibit, it was, I mean,
that's so cool.
I guess I'm dating myself. That was probably in the
No, I actually remember that because I spent some time in DC as well. So
yeah, that was so much fun. Okay, next question is, how do you stay up to date on trends in the direction of the university event industry? Because I imagine it's just like the rest of the event industry where like you see trends in what students want, what parents want as well, because it's not just about, appealing to the students. And yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so again, one, I think it goes back to that generational data, keeping up on that. But two, I'm really lucky to be involved in an incredible professional organization, CIVSA, which I wrote down the name because I didn't want to butcher it, the Collegiate Information and Visitor Services Association. And it is a specific professional organization just for event planners in university admissions. So it's so specific. But that is such a wonderful opportunity, and they provide so many resources for like universities to connect. So, we're recruiting the same type of student. What are you doing? What are you talking about? How are you dealing with spacing issues? And, I think one of the biggest trends in our world is personalization of events. Like they don't want cookie cutter events. They want to know, what can you do for me? And so how can we personalize without adding 50 million events to our calendar, without going over budget, without taxing my staff who are working weekends to put on these events? But how can we still meet those students and those families' needs? And so they are fantastic in being very niche in their purpose. And then on top of that, I'm also currently studying for my CMP exam. So obviously kind of staying up with just general event planning. Because as you mentioned before, I think we are kind of siloed. I think people don't really think about us much. And so it's been really fun to kind of go through that studying experience and feel like, oh, I do this in my job. I just didn't know that that's what that's called because, I don't work in a hotel. I don't work at a big convention center. So that's been really cool too.
Right. I'm also currently studying for my CMP, and I'm finding that I've always worked for like smallish organizations. And so there's like the whole section about procurement, and it's like, what are the steps of procurement? And I'm like,
Buy it.
I'm like a one-man procurement shop. I've never had a procurement team. So
Sign a
I'm sure
contract and buy it. Like,
right, right. So I'm sure that you're finding similar things. When is your
yes.
CMP exam scheduled for? If you
I
have it.
have not booked it yet.
Okay.
So I just got approved with the continuing ed and, the professional experience. And so I haven't actually booked it yet because I'm still wavering on in-person, virtual proctored. I just don't know what will be best for my mindset yet. So we'll see, but hoping by the end of the year.
Okay. All right. Well, good luck.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. And we always end our podcast with a little fun question. Share a memory or experience from a super cool event that you've been a part of, either as an attendee or a producer.
Yeah. So this is also another event that I did in my previous fraternity and sorority life role. We did a conference, and it was originally called like the Women's Wellness Conference or something. But we renamed it to Empower Her because we love a good pun. And we changed it from a traditional keynote breakout session to a more TED Talk style conference. And it was a room full of sorority women coming together, talking about issues about self-esteem and imposter syndrome and breaking up with a toxic best friend. And the energy in that room, like, I know that there are many years separating me from the collegiate sorority women, but being able to put on that event to select the speakers to be like, yes, I think this topic would be really impactful. And then just to feel the energy of that room of a group of like-minded, like valued women coming together and discussing these issues that are so particularly woman was so cool and just such an empowering experience. And it was just one of those moments where I was like, this is why I do this. So it was very cool. And I know maybe one day, since I don't work there anymore, they'll let me be a speaker and come back, but
Maybe you could be their interactive keynote speaker.
exactly. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. That's so heartwarming. Okay, well, this has been a really wonderful conversation, and I've learned a lot from you today. Thank you so much. And thanks to you, dear listener and Meeting Protocol fan, for checking out this episode. Don't forget to go to meetingprotocol.org, where you can sign up for our newsletter, which includes links to all of our podcasts, a CMP tip of the month, as well as tons of resources for all things related to meeting professionals in CMP. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dora.